There are survival situations where the difference between life and death is not days, but hours. According to emergency medicine data, the human body can begin to shut down far faster without water than most people realize. In extreme conditions, heat, stress, or injury, serious complications can begin in less than 24 hours. And yet, many people unknowingly make a critical mistake when they start feeling thirsty, one that can accelerate dehydration instead of slowing it down. But here's the question. Is dehydration really just about not drinking water, or are people unknowingly making it worse without realizing? Let me know your answer in the comments below. According to widely accepted medical guidance from organizations like the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization, water plays a central role in regulating body temperature, maintaining blood circulation, and supporting organ function. The human body is made up of approximately 60% water, and even a small reduction in that balance can begin to affect normal physiological processes. Official emergency preparedness guidelines often reference what is commonly known as the Rule of Threes. This principle suggests that a person can typically survive about 3 weeks without food, but only about 3 days without water. However, this estimate is based on average conditions. In real-world scenarios, particularly in high heat, physical exertion, or limited shelter, this window can shrink significantly. Medical literature indicates that dehydration can begin to impact cognitive function and physical performance with as little as a 1 to 2% loss of body water. At higher levels, symptoms may include dizziness, confusion, rapid heart rate, and decreased blood pressure. In severe cases, this can progress into heat exhaustion or heat stroke, both of which are considered medical emergencies. But dehydration is not always obvious at first. According to clinical observations, thirst is actually a delayed signal. By the time a person feels thirsty, the body may already be experiencing early stages of dehydration. This delay is one of the reasons emergency response experts emphasize proactive hydration rather than reactive drinking. The issue becomes more complex in survival situations. For example, in documented search and rescue cases, individuals lost in wilderness environments often misjudge their hydration needs. Some attempt to conserve water by drinking as little as possible, believing it will extend their survival time. However, according to survival training manuals used by military and rescue organizations, this approach can have the opposite effect. When water intake is restricted too severely, the body's ability to regulate temperature and maintain blood flow becomes compromised. This can accelerate fatigue, impair judgment, and increase the risk of making critical mistakes, such as choosing unsafe routes, misjudging distances, or failing to recognize signs of danger. One commonly cited factor in dehydration-related emergencies is heat. In high-temperature environments, the body relies on sweating to cool itself. This process leads to rapid fluid loss, especially when combined with physical activity. According to occupational safety data, individuals working in hot conditions can lose more than 1 liter of fluid per hour through sweat alone. Without proper replacement, dehydration can progress quickly. But here's where a key mistake often occurs. Some individuals, when faced with limited water supplies, begin rationing too aggressively. Instead of drinking small, consistent amounts, they wait until thirst becomes intense. At that point, they may consume large quantities at once, or in some cases, avoid drinking altogether out of fear of running out. From a physiological standpoint, both approaches can create problems. Drinking too little over time increases the risk of cumulative dehydration. On the other hand, consuming large amounts of water infrequently does not allow the body to maintain stable hydration levels. In extreme cases, it can even lead to discomfort or inefficient absorption. Another factor documented in survival scenarios is the misunderstanding of alternative water sources. In emergency situations, individuals may turn to untreated water sources such as rivers, lakes, or collected rainwater. While access to water is critical, official health guidelines caution that untreated water can contain harmful microorganisms, including bacteria, viruses, and parasites. According to public health data, consuming contaminated water can lead to gastrointestinal illness, which in turn can worsen dehydration through vomiting or diarrhea. This creates a compounding effect, where the attempt to hydrate actually accelerates fluid loss. It's important to note that not all water sources carry the same level of risk. For example, clear-flowing water may appear safer than stagnant water, but without proper treatment, both can still contain contaminants. Emergency guidelines typically recommend boiling, filtering, or chemically treating water when possible. However, in true survival conditions, individuals may not have access to proper purification tools. This leads to difficult decisions, often made under stress and fatigue. According to documented survival accounts, cognitive impairment caused by dehydration can reduce a person's ability to make rational choices. This includes decisions about when and how to drink water, how to conserve energy, and how to seek help. From a legal and public safety perspective, government agencies responsible for emergency response often emphasize preparedness as a key factor in preventing such situations. Official recommendations frequently include carrying adequate water supplies, understanding environmental risks, and having basic knowledge of survival techniques. At the same time, incident reports show that even experienced individuals can underestimate the speed at which dehydration develops. In several search and rescue summaries, individuals reported feeling fine shortly before experiencing sudden fatigue or confusion. This highlights the subtle progression of dehydration and the importance of early intervention. One interpretation of these findings is that dehydration is not simply a matter of water availability, but also of awareness and behavior. Another perspective often discussed in survival training is that psychological factors, such as fear, stress, and overconfidence, can influence how people manage their resources. This is for informational purposes only and not medical or legal advice. Understanding these dynamics can help explain why a mistake that seems minor, like delaying water intake or misjudging thirst, can have serious consequences over a relatively short period of time. As we move deeper into this topic, we'll examine specific real-world scenarios, the timeline of dehydration in different environments, and the exact mistake that experts consistently warn against. Because the reality is, survival is often not about extreme situations alone. It's about small decisions made under pressure, and sometimes, those decisions begin long before the emergency itself. In order to understand how a single mistake can escalate into a life-threatening situation within 24 hours, it's important to examine how dehydration actually progresses over time. According to clinical research in emergency medicine and wilderness survival studies, dehydration does not occur as a single event. Instead, it develops in stages, often subtle at first, but increasingly dangerous as time passes. In the first few hours without adequate water intake, the body begins compensating. Fluid is redirected to essential organs, and non-critical functions start to slow down. At this stage, symptoms may be minimal: slight dryness in the mouth, reduced urine output, or mild fatigue. Because these early signs are not severe, many individuals underestimate their significance. According to documented survival reports, this is often the point where the first mistake occurs. People delay drinking water because they don't feel that bad yet. However, as time progresses into the 6 to 12-hour range, particularly in warm environments or during physical activity, the body's compensatory mechanisms begin to strain. Medical sources note that blood volume can start to decrease, leading to increased heart rate, as the body attempts to maintain circulation. Sweating may continue, especially in heat, accelerating fluid loss further. At the same time, electrolyte imbalances may begin to develop. This is also the stage where cognitive performance can begin to decline. Studies in human performance research have shown that even mild dehydration can affect attention, memory, and decision-making. In survival situations, this becomes critical. A person may begin making choices that seem logical in the moment but increase long-term risk. For example, individuals may choose to continue moving during peak heat hours instead of resting, believing they are making progress. According to survival training protocols used in desert environments, this decision can significantly increase water loss and accelerate dehydration. As the timeline approaches 12 to 24 hours without sufficient hydration, the situation can become more serious. At this stage, symptoms may include dizziness, headaches, irritability, and reduced coordination. Blood pressure may begin to drop, particularly when standing, leading to lightheadedness or even fainting. The body's ability to regulate temperature becomes impaired, increasing the risk of heat-related illness. According to emergency response guidelines, this is often the point where dehydration transitions from manageable to potentially dangerous. One of the key concerns during this phase is heat exhaustion. This condition, as described in occupational health and safety reports, can occur when the body loses excessive water and salt through sweating. Symptoms may include heavy sweating, weakness, nausea, and confusion. If not addressed promptly, heat exhaustion can progress into heat stroke, a far more severe condition. Heat stroke is considered a medical emergency. According to medical literature, it occurs when the body's temperature regulation system fails, causing core body temperature to rise rapidly. This can lead to organ damage, altered mental state, and in severe cases, death. It's important to clarify that not every case of dehydration leads to heat stroke within 24 hours. Outcomes depend on multiple factors, including environmental conditions, physical activity level, age, and overall health. However, official case studies do confirm that under extreme heat and exertion, severe dehydration and heat-related illness can develop in less than a day. One frequently referenced category of incidents involves hikers or travelers who underestimate environmental conditions. According to search and rescue summaries published by National Park Services and outdoor safety organizations, individuals often begin their journey with insufficient water, assuming the trip will be short or manageable. When conditions change, such as unexpected heat, difficult terrain, or getting lost, the situation can escalate quickly. In several documented cases, individuals reported rationing water early in the situation. From one perspective, this decision appears logical, conserving limited resources to extend survival. However, survival experts often advise against extreme rationing in active situations. The reasoning is based on physiology. When the body is deprived of adequate hydration, physical and cognitive performance decline. This reduces a person's ability to navigate, seek help, or find additional water sources. As a result, the likelihood of rescue or self-recovery decreases. Another perspective, sometimes discussed in survival training, suggests a balanced approach, consuming small, consistent amounts of water while minimizing unnecessary exertion. This strategy aims to maintain basic function without exhausting resources too quickly. These differing approaches highlight an important point. Survival decisions are often made with incomplete information and under stress. This is for informational purposes only and not professional survival or medical advice. Another factor that plays a role in dehydration timelines is environment. In cooler climates, the progression of dehydration may be slower, as fluid loss through sweating is reduced. However, dehydration can still occur, particularly if individuals fail to recognize their needs due to lack of thirst signals in cold conditions. In contrast, hot and dry environments, such as deserts, can accelerate fluid loss dramatically. According to environmental physiology studies, low humidity increases the rate of evaporation, causing sweat to disappear quickly from the skin. This can create the illusion that the body is not sweating as much, even though fluid loss is ongoing. This misperception can contribute to underestimating hydration needs. Wind is another factor that can increase dehydration risk. By enhancing evaporation, wind can cause additional fluid loss without obvious signs. Altitude also plays a role. At higher elevations, increased breathing rate can lead to greater water loss through respiration. Combined with physical exertion, this can accelerate dehydration even in moderate temperatures. All of these factors contribute to a complex reality. Dehydration is not a fixed timeline, but a variable process influenced by multiple conditions. Yet, across different environments and scenarios, one pattern appears consistently in documented cases. The most serious outcomes are often linked not just to lack of water, but to how individuals manage the water they have. This brings us closer to the central issue behind this topic. Because while environmental conditions and resource availability are critical, the mistake referenced in this discussion is often behavioral. It involves how people respond to early signs, how they interpret thirst, and how they make decisions under pressure. According to survival training literature and emergency preparedness guidelines, one of the most common and dangerous patterns is waiting too long to act. By the time symptoms become obvious, the body may already be in a compromised state. And in high-risk environments, that delay can significantly reduce the margin for recovery. As we continue, the next section will examine this mistake in precise detail: what it is, why it happens, and how it has been documented across multiple real-world scenarios. Because understanding the mistake is not just about identifying what goes wrong, it's about recognizing how easily it can happen, and how small adjustments in behavior can potentially make a critical difference. As we've seen from documented cases, medical research, and survival training guidelines, dehydration itself is not always sudden, but the consequences can escalate quickly when certain decisions are made at the wrong time. So what is the mistake that experts consistently warn about? It's not simply not drinking water. The mistake is waiting until you feel thirsty before you start managing your hydration properly, especially in high-risk conditions. According to physiological research, thirst is not an early warning system. It is a delayed response triggered after the body has already begun to lose a measurable amount of fluid. By the time a person feels strong thirst, dehydration may already be underway. From one interpretation, this delay exists because the human body evolved in environments where water was not always immediately available. The thirst mechanism encourages conservation, but it does not necessarily provide precise timing for optimal hydration. Another perspective, often discussed in sports science and survival training, is that modern environments, particularly those involving heat, exertion, or stress, can overwhelm this natural system. In simple terms, relying only on thirst can lead to underestimating how much water the body actually needs. This is where behavior becomes critical. In multiple documented survival accounts, individuals report ignoring early signs, such as mild fatigue, dry mouth, or reduced focus. Because these symptoms seem manageable, they are often dismissed. However, according to clinical observations, these early signals are precisely the point where intervention is most effective. Once dehydration progresses, the body enters a more reactive state. Blood circulation becomes less efficient, temperature regulation weakens, and cognitive clarity begins to decline. This creates a feedback loop. As dehydration worsens, the ability to recognize dehydration also decreases. From a cognitive standpoint, this is particularly important. Research in human performance has shown that dehydration can impair judgment and decision-making. In survival situations, this may lead to risky choices, such as continuing physical activity during peak heat, misjudging distances, or failing to seek shelter. One interpretation is that dehydration is not just a physical condition, but also a cognitive risk factor. Another perspective raised in training manuals is that individuals often believe they are making rational decisions, even as their judgment becomes compromised. This combination, delayed thirst signals and reduced decision-making ability, can create a situation where small mistakes compound over time. This is for informational purposes only and not medical advice. Another commonly observed mistake is improper rationing behavior. As mentioned earlier, some individuals attempt to conserve water by drinking as little as possible. While this may seem logical, survival experts often caution that extreme restriction can reduce physical and mental performance. According to survival guidelines, a more effective approach is typically to maintain consistent hydration while minimizing unnecessary exertion. This helps preserve the body's ability to function, rather than simply extending the duration of limited supplies. However, it's important to note that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Conditions, resources, and individual health factors all play a role. What remains consistent across expert recommendations is the emphasis on early and proactive hydration awareness. Another factor that contributes to this mistake is psychological. In high-stress situations, individuals may enter a state of denial or overconfidence. They may believe they can handle the situation longer than they realistically can, delaying necessary action. According to behavioral studies, this response is not uncommon. Under stress, the brain often prioritizes immediate goals, such as reaching a destination, over long-term safety considerations. This can lead to decisions that increase risk, even when safer alternatives are available. From a broader perspective, the mistake is not just about hydration. It's about how humans respond to subtle warning signs. In many cases, those warning signs are present early, but recognizing them and acting on them requires awareness, discipline, and sometimes prior knowledge. Script, final part, conclusion plus engagement. When we look at the full picture from medical research to real-world survival cases, a clear pattern begins to emerge. Severe dehydration within 24 hours is not always caused by a single dramatic event. More often, it is the result of small, compounding decisions, delaying water intake, misjudging environmental conditions, ignoring early warning signs, or relying entirely on thirst as a guide. According to official guidelines and documented evidence, these behaviors can gradually push the body from a stable state into a critical one, sometimes faster than expected. At the same time, it's important to approach this topic with balance. Not every situation leads to extreme outcomes, and individual experiences can vary widely depending on conditions, health, and available resources. However, the underlying principle remains consistent. Awareness and early action can make a measurable difference. From a public safety perspective, this is why emergency preparedness organizations emphasize planning ahead, carrying sufficient water, understanding environmental risks, and recognizing the early signs of dehydration. From another perspective, this topic also highlights how human behavior plays a role in survival outcomes. Because in many cases, the difference is not just what resources are available, but how they are used. This is for informational purposes only, and not professional or medical advice. And perhaps that brings us back to the central idea behind this discussion. The mistake is not always obvious. It doesn't feel dangerous in the moment, but over time, it can shift a situation from manageable to critical. So here's the question. Given the facts, do you think most people are prepared to recognize dehydration early enough, or do these situations reveal a larger gap in awareness and preparedness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown useful and want more fact-based, real-world survival and legal analysis content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss upcoming videos. Also, let me know in the comments, what topic should the next video cover? Your input helps shape future content. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next video.